We wanted to remind you that you're in a Zoom webinar. We cannot see you, so feel free to turn your cameras off. Please also use the question and answer for questions. Please make sure you are addressing your questions to panelists and everyone. Someone else might have the same question that you do. Chat should be used for general questions or comments. Thank you for coming, and I will now pass the presentation to Jenny Duvernay, who will share our ASU Library Indigenous Land Acknowledgement.
Good afternoon. The ASU Library acknowledges the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of Indigenous peoples, including the Acamel Otham, Pima, and Peeposh Maricopa Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. ASU Library acknowledges the sovereignty of these nations and seeks to foster an environment of success and possibility for Native American students and patrons. We are advocates for the incorporation of Indigenous knowledge systems and research methodologies within contemporary library practice. The ASU Library welcomes members of the Acamel Otham and Peeposh and all Native nations to the library. Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Duvernay, and I am the Associate University Librarian for Communications and Donor Relations at the ASU Library. On behalf of the ASU Library leadership team, I welcome you all to this very special community conversation event, which is part of Open Access Week activities. As many of you know, the library has spent many years reinventing the Hayden Library as a reflection of the newly imagined library for the new American University. But really, our work extends far beyond our physical spaces. We are reinventing what this academic library is and how we can partner with faculty, researchers, and the community to leverage our knowledge, skills, and resources for the greater good. And this is an example of that. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce our community conversationalists today. Anali Perry and Katie Hinde are going to be talking about the scholarship of March Mammal Madness. Anali is the head of the Learning Services Division in the Scholarly Communications Librarian at the ASU Library, so that she has 2 jobs. In this role, she oversees the management and operation of the Learning Services Division, which includes the customer service points of all ASU Library locations on all campuses, Ask a Librarian, Course Reserve, and all library learning spaces. As scholarly communication librarian, she leads efforts to provide outreach and education to the ASU community regarding scholarly publishing and copyright, with particular emphasis on fair use, open access to scholarly information, and open education, which should sound familiar for this week's open access activities. Anali is joined by Katie Hinde, who is an associate professor in the School of Human Evolution and Social Change and the Center for Evolution and Medicine at Arizona State University. Katie studies the maternal and infant health with a focus on lactation in humans, monkeys, and other mammal species. And in 2013, she created the March Mammal Madness Science Outreach Campaign and has continued to serve as editor-in-chief as it has grown to an incredible team of scientists, illustrators, conservationists, educators, librarians, designers, and performers to reach hundreds of thousands of players each year. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Anali and Katie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm really excited for this conversation with Anali and talk about everything that we've done in collaboration with the libraries.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a really nice time today talking about our collaboration, a little bit about how we met, but probably we ought to give a quick overview just in case there's somebody attending this webinar who doesn't know about March Mammal Madness. You want to do the honors?
Yeah. So the idea behind March Mammal Madness is a tournament bracket kind of approach to thinking about what would happen if 2 individuals of a particular species encountered each other in their natural habitat or one of their natural habitats. And so what we do is we create this bracket. A group of scientists put together a bracket every year of different featured species, and then we ask players, who do you think would win? And they lay out all the way 64 species out to a champion. And then we spend several weeks using the empirical literature, the natural history, other kinds of animal behavior science to talk about what would likely or possibly happen when they encountered each other, and turn those into stories. So we translate basic science into stories and create narratives about the tournament outcomes. And these are live tweeted out to an audience in the evenings, 3 nights a week, and then summarized in kind of sports writing style that goes out to all the teachers. And we've been doing it. 2022 will be our 10th tournament. And we have thousands of teachers that use this in their classrooms with their students. And so we've been growing systematically every year. And a big part of that has been our partnership with the library.
Thanks. And one thing that it's so funny how sometimes the way connections get made, because it was open access week in 2015 that we met, because I keep an eye on like new people who are moving to ASU, and I saw, Dr. Katie Hinde, new associate professor in Center of Evolutionary Medicine, and you had an open access publication in just one of the maybe it was PLOS or one of those journals, and I was like, aha, I'm going to have an open access week panel, and I'm going to invite this brand new professor to join other panelists to talk about how open access impacts their work. And Katie, you gave a really fantastic presentation. I think I still have the slides somewhere. And you talked about how you view open access publishing as an intentional strategy to reach particular audiences, to make connections with the people your research is going to impact the most. And that fundamentally has affected a lot of the ways that I talk to researchers, especially grad students, early career professionals now, about open access. That it's not just about, it's hard work to do this, but there's some really intentional strategy and benefits for that. So
yeah, and I mean, it's fun to be doing this community conversation today, because it is in many ways the anniversary of our, getting to know each other as colleagues. And, I think, there's a lot of benefits to open access publication, but especially when you're early career, sometimes the costs are a consideration. Sometimes when you're mid-career or senior career, right? The cost can be substantial. And so there's limited funds. And so I think it behooves us where we have to make trade-offs to think about, okay, what are the results that have the greatest translational potential or are going to have the most impact? And as somebody that works in maternal and child health on lactation, there's a lot of potential for this to have importance for clinicians, lactation consultants, pediatricians, neonatologists, and some of them might not be associated with institutions that have access to behind paywall articles. And so as I've kind of pursued different aspects of my scholarship, I'm very, very intentional about where I publish, what findings, and when I really lean into publishing it so it reaches the most people. And it was a really fun opportunity when you invited me to be on that panel to sit down and articulate systematically that intentionality of where we can increase equity and access, and when does that most matter as scholars.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I might not have continued to follow up. I have not had conversations with some of my prior panelists. We haven't always continued on a relationship, but I started following you on Twitter. And of course, when February of 2016 started ramping up, there's all these tweets about mammals and animals and MMM. And I was like, oh, okay, fun. And then all of a sudden, there's this tournament happening. And it was amazing. And I was like, oh, I've never seen somebody use Twitter like this. And oh my gosh, we need to there's something we can do with this. And oh my gosh, they are like writing stories and including citations to articles that nobody can read because they're paywalled articles. And most of the people on Twitter that are reaching and engaging with this aren't going to be able to read those citations. So that was kind of my hook, but I definitely, like I was talking to Denny at the time and saying, Denny, we've got to get the library involved. And she's like, okay, you figure out how.
And I remember you were so nice. You sent me this really nice message and said, you know, March Mammal Madness is so amazing. It's so much fun. I think you phrased it so generously. I think there's some real opportunities in, you know, improving people's access to articles and how to present open access research. And there's also these other kinds of resources at the library. And you brought up, so you first played the tournament in 2016 and reached out to me in the fall of 2016 before the 2017 tournament and kind of started the ball rolling on the idea of a LibGuide. And then you told me about the makerspace. And that's when we started brainstorming what to do for the 5th annual. We tend to look at the like kind of 5th and now the upcoming 10th as milestone sorts of events. So you know, I remember being so excited that you had these ideas, and the ethos of March Mammal Madness has always been to, you know, welcome brilliant contributions and diverse talents and really cool ideas. And when you suggested this, I was like, yeah, this sounds amazing. And so could you talk a little bit about the establishment of the LibGuide? And then after we do the, you know, very professional LibGuide, I'll talk a little bit about what we did with the makerspace.
Yeah, and you know, we had to have a conversation where we talked about what the how to use a LibGuide. So a LibGuide is usually a topical collection of resources or, you know, kind of educational content that librarians use to share out information and resources with anybody. I mean, you know, librarians, we want to share information with everybody. You need all the information. But talking with you, we wanted to structure the LibGuide to have particularly focus on recommended resources for K-12 educators and students to connect with not just Wikipedia, but other sources of animal information to help them research their bracket picks. And then
I've shared screen and I've pulled it up on right now, so people I think can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are at the ASU LibGuide for March Mammal Madness, and keep talking, Anali, and I will click on the things you say.
Well, if you want to scroll down a little bit more, I do want to acknowledge that I am really good at the scholarly communication part, but I am not great at the finding resources according to a topic. That's not the kind of librarian skills that I really have leveled up. And so I do want to acknowledge that I had a lot of collaboration with some of my subject expert and educational expert colleagues, Renee Tanner, Ashley Gore, Janice Hermer, and Nemo Banani, who all helped me curate the resources on this library guide. I currently manage it now because we just kind of keep things updated and fix broken links and continually add information and we'll talk about this a bit more in a little bit. It is now kind of more official platform for March Mammal Madness. But it's nice also, and I do want to point out, like if you look way up at the top, one of the important aspects of the library guide is that it does have an educational URL. It has an asu.edu URL, which means that it makes it a lot easier for K-12 educators to be able to bypass web blockers or filters with that .edu URL.
Yeah, and I want to highlight, so this is one of the top trafficked LibGuides at all of Arizona State University, right?
Oh, it is the top
okay.
by a lot.
Yeah, and so we see like teachers, mostly high school biology teachers. That seems to be our primary teacher base. So about 2/3 of the students are going to be high school students in some kind of biology or environmental science program. And they're able to access this from their school computers, which oftentimes have blocks to things like social media or other kinds of, like, even Blogspot. And one of the useful resources when they're doing research for their bracket is the curation of animal background information. So here you have the Anali and her team of colleagues have put together specific resources from the internet that are freely available and really tailored to the target audience of kind of high school level knowledge about animals and biology. So it helps provide a kind of curated, focused information about the internet so that these kids aren't just trying to find information on the internet from anyone or anywhere. It's really helping them navigate an information landscape, not all of the interwebs.
Well, and of course, I'm just going to highlight, I mean, Layla, you're absolutely right. There has to be STOT. So the STOT converter measurement is linked on there. I try to gather like important fan-made resources as well when I get permission to.
Yeah, so the STOTS as measurement has been an ongoing thing we have many memes that have emerged from the community that makes March Mammal Madness an annual activity. All right. And okay, and so then the other thing that we did that year, because you had me come over and visit Hinde Library, and we're kind of talking about the different things, and I found out that Hinde Library has makerspace where people can, parts of the ASU community can do work with a whole bunch of software, or there's a lot of creative stuff like 3D printers and sewing machines and all sorts of material resources and instruments and different kinds of things that people might not have at home, but that they might want to make things with. And one of the things was also, as an ASU community member, you can go to the library and you can check out the green screen theater and you can film green screen videos. And so for the 5th annual tournament, I'm gonna share screen again, I was able to convince several colleagues to join me in, where is it? Making a green screen video of our first wildcard battle. And here's just a little clip. Where we were able to do a whole bunch of different footage, and then working with a number of graphic designers and other community members actually put together a green screen video of interactions that might happen between animals, and have an associated list of all of the scholarship that underlied the kind of descriptions of these encounters. And it was really great because you have such good copyright knowledge that we were very careful to use public domain music and images and a number of other kinds of things that we put into this so that it was consistent with copyright laws and rules. So we have these animal encounters. All right, and so that was 2017. The launch of the LibGuide, we did the green screen video, which was an absurd amount of work. And then everybody's like, are you doing that for every single battle, the entire tournament? And it was like, no. But the LibGuide is the one thing that we kept going. You kept going in a really major way. So what it's allowed us to do is really understand how it's being used in terms of the timing of the tournament. And it really started us creating this link of the tournament with the libraries that then has expanded. So could you talk about some of the other, Anali has come with all of these ideas, and she'll say, you know, one of the things we might think about doing for this publication. And then I'm like, yes, that would be amazing. So could you talk a bit about the Keep collection?
Yes. So, you know, I think we've been working on the paper, right? It was at least 2 or 3 years. It was a while because So Katie and the rest of the March Mammal Madness team, which is a pretty large team, wanted to, you've been doing a variety of surveys and getting feedback from educators about how they use the tournament in their classroom. We really want to look at the impact that the tournament is actually having and some ways we can discuss that and measure that. We started looking at lots of different, when we started writing it up, we have a massive paper, which we'll definitely share the link to because it's worth a read. And one of the things we wanted to make sure to do with that is to have a stable area where we can make sure that anybody could read this paper, because it definitely, like as we talked at the beginning, it's part of having this target audience. And we know that the MMM fan base is not all academics that are going to be able to subscribe to Nature, for example. They need to have access to the content elsewhere. And so, we made a priority to publish the article in an open access journal, but we also wanted to make sure that we had a stable and consistent kind of library curated collection of not only our current publications, but any future publications done by members of the March Mammal Madness team related to the tournament. We could collect them all together in one place. We're now using it to add and distribute the educational materials from past tournaments. And did you want to say something, Katie? I saw you move your hand.
Oh, sorry. No, I've pulled up the Keep collection and I've shared the screen. And what we've been able to put in here is that, sorry, I'm asking my computer to do a lot right now, apparently. We've been able to put up example play-by-plays. So what does it look like, right? Like I've said, oh yeah, we described the story of what it might happen when the animals encounter each other on Twitter, but that can be hard to imagine if you haven't actually started playing. And so we have example play-by-plays that we have put into the collection. We have we put up archived the publication because it's open access, and so we can host it here as well as at eLife. We have we put all of our education materials. So over the years, in response to teacher requests, we've begun to really expand the curricular materials that we provide in conjunction with the tournament. And so these are all archived together and can be accessed by anybody anytime, which is, I think, one of the many wonderful things about the Keep collection. So we have science-based and humanities-based lesson plans. They're now in both English and Spanish. We've started incorporating materials for like elementary school players as we've expanded beyond the middle school and high schoolers. And then we have certain things that get created quite routinely. So here, I'm gonna pull this up. So Albert Chen is a grad student in the UK, and they've routinely built this beautiful, beautiful phylogeny of all the combatants from the history of the tournament. And this is a huge amount of phylogenetic biological knowledge and a particular skill set. It's loading right now. And but where does that get published? Like, how does that become available to the general public? And how does somebody who obviously has this exquisite, beautiful skill set demonstrate that before they have a lot of publications to show that? And so by putting these kinds of scholarly associated resources with the tournament into the Keep collection, it gets an ascension number, and those trainees can add it as something that contributed to a library collection within their CV. And as more and more universities are recognizing public outreach, science communication, or public-facing materials as a worthwhile application of scholarly ability, this is something that helps to at least get them some credit for things that they're doing anyway, in kind of important and meaningful ways. And then the other thing that I wanted to showcase was this summer we published another paper about the work we've been doing with March Mammal Madness, very focused on the anthropological, bioanthropology content within the tournament. And sorry, I've got to scroll for a second here. And we were invited to be to contribute this to a special issue of a journal that had open access publication rates that were far beyond what we were able to pay for right now. And so, but there are allowances for posting the submitted version of the article in archives. And so I called up Anali and said, I can post this in the Keep collection, but am I required to format it the way it was formatted at submission? Because then it just kind of looks like a college paper. And even though it's the same content as the published article, so it should mentally seem as legitimate and scholarly as the published version, it still doesn't sit the same way. It feels like I'm reading a college paper. And Annalie told us that we could format it however we wanted. And so I spent a little bit more time integrating the tables and the figures and formatting the document to look like more similar to what scholarly publications look like, so that people had access to a fewer number of pages and a more similar kind of psychological effect as reading the published paper that's still behind a paywall. I'm sharing now.
I'm so glad you said that, because I also, like, as a scholarly communication librarian, that varies by publication contract. So make sure you read your agreement. But it's true that most publishers will allow you to publish either your preprint, your submitted version, or your final accepted version in an institutional repository. And most of the time, I mean, they don't say anything about, if you keep your copyright, you can make it look however you want to. I think Katie's right in that having a professional looking paper helps give it that extra stamp. And there's two other things about the Keep collection that I think are important to point out, and especially as we're looking at early scholars that are wanting to maintain and build their record of scholarly contribution. We have a handle, which is a stable URL for every item in the collection. So that means that even if here in the library, we might change platforms, or we might, just like we move physical books from one location to another, we sometimes move digital objects from one location to another, but the permanent handle will always resolve the correct location. So however, 10 years from now, Albert should still be able to click on the handle and have access to that phylogeny. The other thing is that we also release the educational content, everything in there under a Creative Commons license, so that we're giving permission in advance for other people to be able to share, to distribute, to copy, and sometimes modify the work. I think we chose a share-alike license. So if they make any modifications or adaptations and want to distribute it elsewhere, they will need to do it under that same license, so that we kind of help have people pay it forward in that this should stay open and part of the community to contribute to the public good.
Yeah, absolutely. And related to that, one of our collaborators on the team really made sure to anchor the lesson plans to next generation science standards, so that it links into the kinds of content that high school students particularly are going to be learning at any particular time. And we've made a committed effort for this to stay an open educational resource, and people that transform it keep it, as you say, within that open educational resource community. And I think that that's been really important for making sure that it's easily adoptable and accessible to everyone, right? Because as soon as you start making these things have onboard costs, you're gonna limit who can access it. And one of the things that we've been really excited about with the tournament is that it's used across the United States in proportion to the student population. So in the Northeast, in the Great Lakes, in the South, in the Mountain West, in the Pacific states, we're seeing traffic using it in proportion to the distribution of the student population. We're also seeing a near proportional representation across urban, suburban, and rural communities. So the tournament's reaching everyone, and we're really, really excited about that. And I think a big part of that has been that it's been an open educational resource. we should mention the Dataverse,
Yes.
and then we can do our lightning round.
Oh, yes. Right.
So when we were putting together the publication, the Keep collection was also getting established so that we could cite the Keep collection and direct people to what was going to be an expanding curated collection from the first eLife publication about the tournament. And we also were able to get a Dataverse data repository from Matthew Harp and Deirdre. Remind me of Deirdre's last name.
Kermit.
Yes, and they
helped us set it up. Yeah,
they had to set it up, and I'm sure I gave them all sorts of fits between raw source and imputed data. And but it's been I think a really fantastic. Let me share my screen and let me pull up the Dataverse. Here we are. So this is the ASU Library Research Data Repository. And these are the first two data sets that we've put up. They were put up in tandem with the publication in eLife and cited there so that people can come and see all of our raw source data. So one of the things that we were able to include in the publication was a lot of thematic analyses of the qualitative free write answers of the educators. So how were they using it with their students? What were their thoughts about the tournament? What were the things that were notable and how it was playing out in the classroom? So that kind of thematic analysis requires, a qualitative lens that involves an amount of interpretation that is very specialized within the social sciences, but maybe less familiar to other life scientists or people working in other fields. And so this allowed us to put all of those free write answers from the educators so that everybody could see the raw data on which we based our summary statements. And so it's been, I think, a really important research for demonstrating open science and also some of the individual stories about using the March Mammal Madness tournament.
Yeah, and the Dataverse, our research data repository is powered by a platform called Dataverse, which is fun to say. I think that's why we like to keep saying it. It is a fairly new repository for the ASU Library. We just really launched it in the fall, like about a year ago. I think we really rolled it out. And one thing that I want to share about it as well, it also has data citation recommendations. It also has a DOI, a permanent URL for every data set that is included in a Dataverse collection. But working with Matt Harp, who is our research data librarian, he also helped me and helped Katie quite a lot. Think, how are we going to put this data together in ways that are going to be maximally reusable by other people? Think about, is everybody going to have Excel? Is it going to come out appropriately? Are all the fields listed? And I recently had to submit my own data set for a research project, and I was consulting with Matt as well. How am I going to put this in ways that are going to be really useful for people to use later on? So I want to shout out other librarian expertise that has really helped pull this content together.
Oh yeah, Matt was amazing in helping me format the README file to explain what all of the data were and how to, what everything was. And we had a lot of data, and it was a wonderful collaboration, and I really appreciated all the help and guidance. And we had discussions, right, where we talked about, okay, these are what the data are, and here's the different ways we can imagine people possibly wanting to think about them, and how do we put this and explain this and make it so that it's really user friendly in a comprehensive way. And that was a fantastic process, and it was amazing for the library to really help, especially as we were in the countdown to the article publication, right? Because we wanted to get that up and clean and ready to go at the time that the article published, which was also being timed to be in the month before we launched the 9th tournament. so that people could read it. And that paper remains, Anali is one of the co-authors on it. So she knows, but that we had such a fun time writing it and embedding all of these tournament jokes and memes. And there's a lot of really, really intense scholarly content there. But we also demonstrated that part of the reason the tournament is successful is because there's a lot of fun embedded in it. And we made sure that we manifested that in our scholarly publication about it as well.
So we're gonna do some fun now. We play right into that.
It's almost like we outlined what we were going to talk about.
Oh, amazing. Imagine that.
All right. Do you want to go first or second?
You should we alternate?
No, my questions build on each other. They have to be rapid fire after each other. So do you want?
I better go first.
Okay. You mean you want to ask questions first, or you want to? Okay.
I want to ask questions first,
okay,
because then I will not regret my choices.
You just know that I like to talk a lot, and so you're hoping that I'll take up the rest of the time and you'll get to skate out of here without your lightning round questions. I'm wise to you, Annalie. All right.
What?
Give me your 5 rapid fire questions.
What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Ooh, Butterfinger.
Ooh, good. Which MMM contender were you most disappointed by an early elimination?
Every time Wolverine loses, my heart breaks. I love Wolverine. I want them to win. We've never had a mustelid champion. It's the most amazing living mustelid around. Despite everybody's infatuation with the honey badger, Wolverines are better in every dimension. So anytime Wolverine, it exited round 1 of the first year because it overheated because I foolishly put it fighting somewhere. I spent like an hour trying to find somewhere in the habitat of its combatant where it wouldn't overheat. Always that one. I created the cold adapted division just to give Wolverine the best chance possible. The random number generator just does not support Wolverine's winning. That one, guts me.
I did not know that. See, this is fun. Okay, so here's this is one of my so what is your favorite productivity hack or thing you do to get productive?
Oh yeah, so I have when I'm on top of my game, so rarely, I have an ongoing list I have a to-do list. And I have it broken down into 15 to 30 minute things, 2 to 3 hour things, and then big things that have subparts. And so whenever I have a chunk of time that I don't have a meeting and I don't have a class, I'll grab that list and just, if I have 20 minutes on the clock, I'll grab one of my 20-minute things and handle it. And so when I'm really regimented about doing that and updating it every week, I get so much more done. It's awesome.
You keep that in paper or something else? Follow-up question.
I keep it in paper, and this is actually a pro tip for junior faculty. You get asked to do a lot, and usually by people that have, that you perceive as having decision-making power over your tenure case and stuff. And so they'll be like, I think you'd be great for this. I would literally, in a hallway, I'm gonna suggest you for this. I'd be like, that sounds amazing. I would love to do that. And then I'll pull out my list and I'll be like, this is what I've got going on right now. I don't know that I can fit what you're suggesting on this list. So what should I cancel and take off so I can accommodate your request? And then they look at your list and they're like, 1, you're reminding them of all you're doing. 2, they on their own volition retract the invitation and say, I'll think about, I'll recommend you in 2 years. And you're like, oh, really? Okay. So I have I used to carry that paper list around in my pocket pre-tenure.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of need that now.
I would love to do that. I'm saying yes. What do you think I should take off my list? And then that way, because it's really hard to be in a position where you're telling somebody no, right? You don't, and especially depending on identity, you can be enculturated to be very accommodating and nice and we all kind of, don't want to miss out on opportunities. And so our inclination to just say yes without really thinking it through. So I always like to put myself in the position of making the other person, say, you know what, I'm gonna go to somebody else for this, not put it on your plate because you've got a lot on your plate.
That's, okay, two more. What is your favorite hike?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Phew. It's, I mean, I could just like be like, it's the one I just, the one I most recently went on, or the one I'm planning next. But I went, I went hiking on Mount Rainier this summer, up above Paradise, up kind of not quite up to like any much of the snowpack, but I got to see marmots running around and fighting. And so any hike where I get to watch animal behavior is definitely a win. And I anywhere in public lands or oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know that I have a favorite. I just love being in nature, and I've never been on a hike that I didn't like. So the one to Yosemite Falls is kind of brutal. You're in the sun the whole time and it's just switchbacks. So that one's pretty tough, but
the chaos, right?
yeah. Anyone where I see animals. So the best one lately was Rainier, and I got to watch a lot of marmots. So that was great. Good question.
All right. One last question, and this one's just a little shout out to the MMM at the movies crowd. What is your favorite song from The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Oh, what's this? What just that I mean, like, I just identify with that so much. Like this is amazing. I'm super excited. I'm just gonna like run around screaming in my excitement. That like that's like my id on the screen. So yeah, what's this?
I should have predicted that.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. Before we get to the community questions, I've got some rapid fire questions for you, Annalie.
Okay.
What's your favorite mammal?
Cat.
Oh,
I'm a cat lover.
okay.
It gets harder the longer I play in this tournament, though.
Fair enough. Okay. So what's really funny is people watching from home, we did not discuss our questions at all in advance, but my question number 2 is also, what is the MMM battle outcome that still makes you irate?
Ooh. Well, it's hard to be irate because the storytelling is always so good. But I had harbor porpoise as a champion, and it got beat out by a seahorse. Seahorse. Harbor porpoise.
Yeah, that seems
broke my heart.
Yeah, it's tough when your champion goes out on some kind of interesting technicality.
Yes.
All right. So number 3 is a 2-parter. When did you decide to be a librarian, and how did you know that's what you wanted to do?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I was a music major in my undergraduate years here at ASU, and I had a student position at the music library here at ASU. And I realized pretty early on in my career, in my student career, that I actually did not want to be a rock musician like I thought, because I actually would rather just play with my friends on my front porch and not in front of many audiences. And I also liked having a steady paycheck. So when I graduated with my music degree, I got a staff position here at Hayden Library, and actually my desk was not that far from where my office is right now. And after a couple of years, I thought, I do really like this library gig. I think I'll get my master's in library science and become a librarian. Again, because I really like the work we do here. I like the public mission and steady paycheck, and I still have time to play music, so that's pretty good.
Perfect. This isn't one of my official questions, but what instrument do you play?
So my degree was in guitar performance, in classical guitar performance. So I play guitar, and I am currently learning to play the Mexican vihuela, and I play in a little mariachi band with my husband.
Oh,
So
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. So I'm going to use that as one of my questions because we're getting audience questions. So we're gonna go over to the community conversations quickly. So so my last question is, what do you wish all ASU faculty knew about the ASU Library?
Oh, talk to us early. Bring us into the conversation and talk to us early because we can help you succeed.
That is so true. So many, yeah, that should be the main professional productivity hack. Reach out to the library early on, whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right.
That wasn't so bad.
You unwittingly implied that you were worried I'd ask mean questions.
That, you know, I thought you were going to ask what my favorite book was. I'm so glad you didn't.
Oh, well, I mean, you stumped me with my favorite hike. It's like, oh, I love them all equally. How can I pick one? Oh, all right. How are we structuring the Q&A?
I think we were just gonna pull them out, I think. Is there anything else in our structured talk we just missed? I don't think so.
No, we come.
No, we're good. Okay.
With guide, open access, equity, bringing everybody together.
So, yeah. All right, so I'll start with the first question that's from the Q&A tab from Matt, because I really expect, actually, I'm not surprised he asked this question. He's trying to stump us too. So he loves the videos that have been done for the tournament. A lot of the ones from MC Marmot, a bunch of the other videos. And he wants to know how we came up with them and their importance to the program, which you could talk about that. The second piece is, do you plan to archive them with the library? Because there's no guarantee they'll be around forever on YouTube. And thanks, Matt.
All right, so that's a great question. And the answer is that for the first 2 years, MC Marmot was a totally outsider guerrilla endeavor. We didn't know who was doing it. We didn't know who was behind it. We didn't know what, like they fell in love with the tournament and had the idea of doing a sports program with animal puppets, rodents. And our art director, Karen Henning, had a suspicion that she knew who they were, and it turns out that that was accurate. And so, so this is something that I think is really important about what we found out about the tournament. So the tournament have actually become kind of like a keystone species within the ecology of SciComm. So a lot of museums piggyback on the tournament. So the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, this last year, they did a tour of their Hall of Mammals and then highlighted combatant species in March Mammal Madness. And so it ran during the school day, a whole bunch of people like from classrooms, LinkedIn, and the Illinois Science Council, MC Marmot. These are folks that basically use the tournament in their own existing SciComm initiatives. So that's how MC Marmot came on the scene, and we haven't talked to them about any kind of permanent archive, but that would be a really great conversation to have, because it turns out that the people behind MC Marmot are librarians at a different institution. So
I didn't know that.
Librarians just coming out of the woodwork, making things better all the time. So there's the MC Marmot story. But great suggestion.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
Yep.
I'll ask the next question because you can answer it better. How do you choose which animals will be included each year in the tournament?
That is a great question. And it gives us a chance to highlight that we are going to do a follow-up community conversation in February. What's the date that we're doing that? February
24th?
19th? 24th?
24th is what I have.
Okay, so we're going to be doing another community conversation that's going to be about the mechanics of March Mammal Madness after the bracket drops for the 10th annual tournament in 2022. But one of the ways that we figure out which species are going to be included is we keep track of interesting science that gets announced across the year. So if there's interesting species that show up in the news, we'll think about it. some of our idea files are many years old, so we'll kind of put together divisions over time. So for example, last year, we had planned to do a mammal money division, which was going to feature species that are on currency from around the world. And in the depths of a year into the pandemic, when nobody could travel and everyone was broke, we thought a division built around money around the world in other countries would maybe not resonate the way we wanted. So we got rid of that division, postponed it for another time. And instead, I think I panicked and made, animals that are red.
That was a good one. Red in fur.
Red in fur was the division we replaced them with. And so our goal is we have a big idea file. We have different divisions every year. And we want it to be a mix of familiar species, novel species, and really unexpected species. And we want to have a nice taxonomic breadth, and we want to make sure that it's geographically diverse. And so it kind of comes together somewhat by alchemy, based on what's going on in the different divisions, and we don't want too many redundancies, and we keep track of what we've had in recent years, and we don't tend to have species that have won or gone really far. We give them a break for a few years, in part just because otherwise we're just kind of talking about the same adaptations and the same publications over and over, and we want to make sure that we expand this. So we've featured over 450 different species as combatants at this point, and we've gone way beyond mammals because there's some really, really cool adaptations in the other animal clades. Great question.
Well, and some of the scientists that are and researchers that are part of the team are not actually mammalogists. And so it lets them highlight some of their work and research and expertise in ways that are pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we're getting our 5-minute warning from 2 minutes ago.
Right.
And so let's see, what are some other questions?
We have somebody attending from Nova Scotia. Thanks for coming, Tina.
Thank you. Okay, and
any last questions?
Patricia has a question. How has the tournament changed over the years as people use it? So what we found is that the tournament has grown. Every year it grows. So it grows in the user base. So we first started collecting data on educator use in 2018, and it was like 1,500 educators responded to that survey. Last year we had over 6,000. And so the user base is expanding. We also have grown, so we have some journals curate special issues where they get articles from their catalog and make them freely available for the tournament that feature combatant species. So Oxford University Press has been partnering with us for about 5 years now, where they feature articles that then can be freely accessible about the combatant species. We have the art team, we have people who love playing the tournament and have knowledge or expertise or talents or skills. It's been really wonderful because they'll come forward and say, hey, I have this idea, or your PowerPoint bracket is could benefit from being a beautiful graphic design one that here you go, I've created this. And very kind, people are so kind when what they're thinking is like, this is a disaster of jankiness and we can do better, and then they show up to help, right? So like it's actually like so wonderful because the community is notable for how much people see ways to have it grow and become more accessible, or reach a wider audience, or be translated into other languages, or it's just been this beautiful kind of growing collective. And so every year it changes because more people contribute, and so that has this really beautiful multiplicative effect. And I not just because this is our purpose here today, but I think the library contributions have been a huge part of making it more accessible, reaching more audiences, and really have compounding value for all the users. So I've benefited so much that Anali asked me to come and talk about open access publications in fall of 2015 because
For Open Access Week.
for Open Access Week, it has allowed us to make the tournament even more open access. And that was no part of that initial invitation when the first semester I arrived at Arizona State University. So thank you.
Well, and I've had a lot of fun being able to play March Mammal Madness and talk about it a lot at work and tell people it's part of my job. And and I don't know if they always believe me, but maybe after today they will.
Well, one of the things I just want to close out and say this is that, you know, we had over 6,000 teachers tell us that they were going to share these materials with over 400,000 students. And, you know, maybe not all of the students got it, maybe not all the students got engaged. And so we don't really know the exact footprint, but it's in the hundreds of thousands of students. And I sit down and I think about the fact that that's 3 to 4 times the student enrollment at Arizona State University being made possible in large part by ASU libraries. And so it is really about the ways in which we've innovated this amazing tournament and then positioned it to have this incredible reach. So thank you for making that possible.
Thanks. And I think we're at time. I think Jenny's ready to usher us out the door.
Yeah, so I just want to say, this is Jenny DuVernay again. I'm going to jump in and just say that Annalie and I have been talking and promoting Open Access Week since 2009. And every year I've always asked for like nice concrete ways to understand and to help people understand the importance of open access. And I think that what you just described, Katie, the reach and the potential and the way to integrate these freely available materials and reach hundreds and thousands of students each year to learn things that are important and useful and fun. Like learning can be fun, I think is like the best example of the power of open access. So like this is fulfilling my wish. So anyway, we really, on behalf of the library, I want to thank Katie and Annalie today for sharing your openness, your expertise, your enthusiasm. Katie, your friends behind your shoulders there, who look like they're ready to battle it out. And as you mentioned, this was just part one of a 2-part conversation, and that Annalie and Katie will be back at the end of February, where we get to learn more about the mechanics and get warmed up and be ready to fill our brackets out. Thank you everybody for attending and for sharing your feedback and your questions. You will be receiving a post-event survey, so please take a moment to fill this out and let us know if you have other areas of libraries that you would like to learn about with future conversations. So thank you very much. Have a